is really what is the most, the one that I really love, and it's called family. Can you say family? You know, sometimes people go to church and they connect with the building, and they think, you know, that, oh, the church is that building, and I go to that building, and so their connection is really with a place, not with people. But I believe that when God created the church, the way He envisioned it was really family. And it all started in the book of Genesis, when God instituted marriage and He blessed Adam and Eve. He said, be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth, and all of that. So while talking about family, we are going to deal with this in two parts. One is physical family, and then spiritual family. That's our church family. So I'm going to really talk about both of them. Now, over the years, I have gotten to understand one thing, that in life, we get to choose our friends, but we cannot choose our family. You can choose your friends, but you cannot choose your family. So if some of you are a little ashamed of your family, or you just, you know, you feel, oh, when you look around, or you associate with other people, and you know, you wonder, oh, why am I not in this family, or why was I born in this family, or why am I this color, and why am I not that color, and you know, why am I this shape and not that shape? And you know, you can have all of these insecurities. But I just want to tell you that you are where you are by the plan and purpose of God. You're not there by accident. So please dispel any kind of notion that you may have that if you're from this state, or you're from that place, or you're from a rich family or a poor family, or whatever, you're really where God wants you to be. And I hope that you will get that understanding. And once you get that understanding, you will be able to enjoy the relationship that God has given to you in your physical family as well as in your spiritual family. Now, I am very blessed. I consider myself very blessed. I have a great physical family. This is my immediate family. We have one addition. His name is Neil. He married my eldest daughter, Shefali, so he became part of the family. And not only that, we all have extended families. So all of you will have an immediate family, and then you'll have an extended family. And this is what my extended family looks like. This picture's a couple of years ago. And you can see 4 generations of our family here. The first generation was my grandmother, who died, I think, 2 years ago or something like that. And she was almost 101. So at her 100th birthday, this was actually taken at her 100th birthday, where all the families came together wherever we were to celebrate her 100th birthday. Then, of course, the second generation that you can see is the one in the yellow. That's my mother's generation. My mother is now 85. So you can imagine she probably will reach the age of my grandmother. And then those in the white are the third generation, and those who are not circled are the fourth generation. That's Danny and the rest of them, or Sonia and all of those. So we were 4 generations. Now that's my physical family. Apart from that, I relate also with my spiritual family. That's all of you. And many who are not here today, but they are in the picture. But this is the next level of relationships that I really value and love. They are important to me. You are important to me. You're important to everybody in this room. We are important to each other. So if you come to this church, I hope you just don't feel you're a part of an organization or you're a part of a building. I hope you grow out of that and you feel a part of a family. That's my hope. And then I just don't relate with the people in this room. Then I relate with a larger family that's called the Every Nation Global Family. Like Apollo said, we are in about 84, 85 countries. And this is part of our global family. These are the key leaders that lead our work around Asia and some other parts of the world. So I do relate with these people as well. And not only with them, but a lot of other churches and families. Next week, a lot of us will be in Manila, relating with the Every Nation Global Family. They will all be there. And there are moments like that where we really celebrate and we enjoy each other. And every 3 years, we encourage our global family to come together and what we call a world conference. And next year it is happening in Orlando. Now, honestly, I have no regrets about the relationships in my life or the family God put me in. When growing up, I had lots of questions, and I wondered why I was born in Allahabad, a small town, and blah blah blah. And I beat myself up, and what if I was born here or born there and all. But after God began to work in my heart, I realized my security came from my relationship with Him and the people God put around me, the family He chose for me. And I started to embrace that and enjoy that. And the moment it becomes like that for you, then you're on the best trajectory ever. Because then you'll enjoy every moment. But if you come in like, you're just a stranger, you're a visitor and all, but you never connect at a level deeper than that, then that's something that you are doing out of choice. So we have to understand that God puts us into families for a purpose, and I hope and I pray that you will grow and you will have a revelation. As we talk about this as our core value, that you would understand this. So my prayer as we look at family is what Paul prayed for the believers in Ephesians, and I want to read that. In Ephesians chapter 3, verses 14 to 19, Paul says, "For this reason I kneel before the Father, from whom every family in heaven and on earth derives its name. I pray that out of His glorious riches He may strengthen you with power through His Holy Spirit in your inner being, so that Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith. And I pray that you, being rooted and established in love, may have power together with all the Lord's holy people, to grasp how wide and long and high and deep is the love of Christ, and to know this love that surpasses knowledge, so that you may be filled to the measure of all the fullness of God." Let's pray. Father, I ask this morning that you would speak to us, God, that we would have, even as we've looked at all of these core values over the last 4 weeks. And God, today as we talk on family, Lord, I pray that people here would be, God, even challenged in their own hearts and spirits, Lord, to belong first to you and then to each other. So, Father, I pray, speak to us this morning. In Jesus' name, amen. In order to fully comprehend the core value of family, we've got to look at God's perspective, not every nation's perspective. First of all, to understand what's God's perspective on family. Now, God's perspective on family, like I said, it started in the book of Genesis. When God, in His divine wisdom, He created man, woman, He instituted marriage. Now, when we think of that, the author of all of that was really God. And if you read in the book of Genesis, it's very, very interesting. I don't know if you've ever observed this when you read. When the book of Genesis is actually divided into 50 chapters. But those 50 chapters are actually 10 sections. That's how it works. And it's actually the demarcation, when you read the book of Genesis, the demarcation of those sections are, this is the phrase you'll read, this is the account of. And then it goes on to give you a huge account of what God is doing. So in Genesis 11 and verse 27, it says, this is the account of Terah. Now you are going, immediately when you read that, what do you think? You think the next, all of what comes after that is really going to be about Terah. Because this is his account, right? But you'll be very surprised. If you read the account, you will actually find that there are 6 verses about Terah. Only 6. But there are 6 chapters about his son Abraham. That's really strange. You can actually read it. The account has 6 verses about the guy, and then 6 chapters about his son. Amazing. Teaches us something. That was never about the guy, it was about the family. Then if you look at Genesis chapter 25 and verse 19, it says, this is the account of Abraham's son Isaac. So now Abraham's son Isaac, and you think that the whole account will be about Isaac. But if you read all of this thing after that, there's a whole section about Isaac's sons, Esau and Jacob. So it was not really about Isaac. Though the account was about Isaac, it was always about the next generation. From God's perspective, the account of Isaac is about his sons. It's always been about family. God's view of our lives goes way beyond us. It really goes to the next generation. So if you think, you're part of this and you're the highlight and you're the center of the universe and all, sorry, you're not. And nor am I. But God's view is life and family extend beyond us. It really extends to our children and grandchildren, and it extends through the generations. That's what you have to understand. Now, having said that, we are going to look at 2 examples from the book of Peter. In 2 Peter 2, 5 to 8, it says, if he did not spare the ancient world when he brought the flood on its ungodly people, but protected Noah, a preacher of righteousness, and 7 others, and if he condemned the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah by burning them to ashes and made an example of what is going to happen to the ungodly, and if he rescued Lot, a righteous man, who was distressed by the filthy lives of lawless men, for that righteous man living among them day after day was tormented in his righteous soul by the lawless deeds he saw and heard. Now in this passage, actually, Peter is talking about the judgment of God. But how, not only the judgment of God, is that God is desirous to rescue righteous people out of every kind of judgment or whatever is coming. So God will rescue the righteous. And then Peter mentions 2 examples here, and I'm going to really talk about these 2 examples in the context of family. The first example is Noah, and the second example is Lot. And if you read this passage here, you can see that it says, but protected Noah, a preacher of righteousness. Noah was a righteous man. And so was Lot. It says, for that righteous man living among them day after day was tormented. So I want you to understand where they are coming from. They are both favored in the sight of God. They are both righteous. You get that? Because very, very important to understand that. When you think of family and you think about their lives, it's going to be very interesting. Now we understand, we've probably read about Noah, that he's the guy, and Amulya read the account where a big flood came, and he saved his family and he rescued his family out of that. But also you've probably read the story of Lot, and he followed Abraham, and then the angel spoke to him about leaving Sodom, and because God was going to destroy those cities. But really then what happens to both of them? Now Noah and Lot were people who were righteous, but they did life and family completely differently. They were both righteous people. They both knew God, but it's very interesting to see how they did life and family. They were very, very different. Theirs was actually a tale of two families, and sadly the best and the worst. And you can be wondering to yourself, oh, how can a righteous person make such bad choices? That's something really you've got to think about. Now, taking a look at Lot, let's take a look at Lot, taking a closer look. Lot's character was something that was questionable. Lot was respected the least by people who knew him the most. Least respect by the people who knew him the most, and he was respected the most by people who knew him the least. And I'll explain that to you in a minute. But this was really the character of this man. He was a righteous man. So those who were closest to him, now you would wonder, right, that people closest to you should be the ones who really look up to you, respect you, honor you, all of that. That would be the perfect scenario. But it was not like that in their cases. Lot was a righteous man who made many mistakes and blunders and messed up his family. Very, very sad. Righteous people do that quite often. And that's something you need to think about. You can be righteous, but you can lead your family horribly. Genesis 19:1 shows us Lot was sitting at the gateway of Sodom. He was like the city councillor. He had got a place of leadership in the government of Sodom, which means he had respect among the people of that city. But in Genesis 19 and verse 14, when he tells his children, oh, we must, the angel of the Lord has come and he's told me he's going to destroy this city and all of that, and so we must leave. What was their response? They laughed at him. They didn't even believe. His children even didn't believe what he said. People closest to him, his family, laughed and questioned what he said. Very, very sad. Why was it like that? I want to give you 3 reasons why the people closest to Lot respected him the least. The first reason is that Lot had a weak relationship with God. Though he was righteous, Lot had a weak relationship with God. In Genesis 12 and verse 4 it says, so Abraham went as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he set out from Haran. So what is this account? What is it saying? When Abraham received the call of God to leave his country and his people and go to the land where God would show him, Abraham left and he went. Abraham followed God. Lot followed Abraham. That's the difference. Abraham followed God, Lot followed Abraham. Now sometimes you may say, Pastor Ken, what's wrong in that? What's wrong in following a godly leader? No, nothing wrong in that. But if that's all your revelation is going to be, that okay, I'm going to just follow. What if Apollo begins to say, I'll just follow PK blindly, but I have no relationship with God, I have no ability to hear God, I have no ability to receive from God, I'm just going to follow PK. How long before he's going to be messed up frustrated in that relationship? It's not going to take long. And that's exactly what happened with Lot. He didn't follow God. So I encourage my physical family as well as my spiritual family. Every one of you have a personal relationship with God. If you have a personal relationship with God, we will all be able to relate with each other. If you don't have that personal relationship with God, we won't really be able to relate with each other for too long. It's only God working in us that can connect us so divinely and so relationally that we become like such a tight-knit family. The starting point is God, because He was the author of family. The second is Lot had misplaced priorities. That's why those closest to him didn't respect him. Misplaced priorities. You see, if you read the account of Genesis, in Genesis 13, and if you read from 8 to 13, you'll see that Lot and Abraham, they became very wealthy. God blessed them abundantly. They became so wealthy that, that bickering started among the servants. They all had so much of flocks, so much of servants and all of that. So people began to bicker with each other. Oh, that's my goat, that's my sheep. And all this, things started off. So finally, Abraham decided, no, I'm not going to live this kind of family life, every time we are quarreling about all our wealth and we are so wealthy. So he came to a point where he tells Lot, so they come to this point and he says, now Lot, take a look. Everything is before you. You take the first pick. Choose what you want and go. And whichever way you choose to go, I'll go in the other direction. That was it. Let's part ways in a good manner. So you have the pick. The best of the land is before you. And this is what happened in Genesis 13, 10 and 11. Lot looked up and saw that the whole plain of the Jordan was well watered, like the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt towards Zoar. This was before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. So Lot chose for himself the whole plain of the Jordan and set out towards the east. The two men parted company. Now I want you to catch this, what happened really. When Abraham gave Lot the choice, I said Lot had misplaced priorities. Lot looked at what was financially viable. What looked good financially. And he made his pick. He didn't care that he was going to be living on the border of Sin City. That didn't worry him. It looked financially very viable. It doesn't matter if all kinds of illicit, adulterous things are happening just next to me. That didn't worry Lot. It was misplaced priority. He only saw the financial bottom line. and he made a decision to move that way. An important lesson you all need to learn. Decisions made solely on the basis of finances are usually bad decisions. Decisions made solely on the basis of finances are usually bad decisions. This is a huge piece of wisdom. Please take note of it. If you only look for your own financial gain, you're making a huge mistake. Lot took his family for granted. He took their spiritual well-being for granted. Number 3, why did the people closest to Lot not respect him? Lot was a compromiser. A short way to mess your family up is to compromise. Start to compromise in just the little things, in this. I'll tell you how compromises work. Oh, this Sunday, I just felt lazy, so I won't go to church. That's a small compromise. Oh, I had such a difficult week. It's a small compromise. Oh, I have this, oh, I have that. All small compromises. They all start that way. And before long, you don't know how far you've been swept. It all starts with small compromises. In Genesis 13, it records that Lot built his tent near Sodom. In Genesis 14, we see that he's actually started living in Sodom. He just didn't build his tent near the place, now he's living in the place. By the time it comes to Genesis 19, he's pleading with his family, please leave this place. This is a bad decision. Let's get out. But it was too late. It was too late. You know, sometimes when I used to live overseas, people would tell me, you can get people out of India, but you can never get India out of people. You didn't catch that. You can get people out of India, but you can't get India out of people. So they live overseas. As soon as they come back to India, they'll take the garbage and throw it. There they'll put it in the bin. Right, Dr. Vikas? There they'll walk to the bin and find, because there's fine if you throw the garbage anywhere. But India doesn't care. They'll just open the window and out of the car. My blood boils when I see it. Really, why? But it's like that. So this is what happened with him. It was too late. Sodom was already living in him and his family. Because the first thing his children did after they escaped from Sodom, and you can read the account that they got drunk and they were in immoral relationships. Why? Because that culture had got to them. Compromise takes you further than you want to go. You know, you compromise one, and then you'll go further. Compromise will keep you longer than you want to stay. When you begin to compromise one thing, it's going to take you to the next thing, to the next thing, to the next thing. Compromise will cost you more than you want to pay. When you compromise, it may look that way initially, a small lie, a small slip here. Oh, nobody will ever notice, nobody will ever know. Don't fool yourself. All begins that way. Whenever we compromise, a seed is sown that will grow, that will cause us to be eventually wrecked. Remember, Lot was not a pagan. He was not idolatrous. He was not a horrible, sinful man. In fact, the Bible calls him righteous. That's what it called him. But he made a lot of dumb decisions and he wrecked his family. He could have chosen to do it right. He didn't. Now let's move on to Noah. I said they're the tale of two great leaders, both righteous, but they led their families differently. Noah, let's look at Noah's example. Noah is a prime example of a person who was successful in doing life, job, and family. Noah was respected the most by those who were closest to him. The opposite of Lot. The ones who were closest to Noah respected him the most. And he was respected the least by those who knew him the least. So it didn't really matter. If somebody didn't know him, they didn't respect him. It didn't matter to him. But the relationships that mattered, they were the ones who really respected him. And the fact is that we see that when Noah was given the commission to build an ark, everybody around him, ridiculed him, laughed at him, jeered at him, this, that. He just went on with the task given to him. He didn't care about what they said, what they thought. It must have pained him and hurt him, but he didn't get deterred by that. He stayed on the course. And finally, the time came when the flood hit. Noah asked his family to follow him in the ark, and they obeyed and they followed him. They didn't then laugh and wonder, why are you doing this? Why are you building this ark and all of this? They understood that. What happened when Lot gave the warning that God is going to destroy the city? His children laughed at him. When Noah said the flood's going to come, his children obeyed him. Huge difference how you build family. Because that's how it happens. In Hebrews 11 and verse 7 it says, by faith, Noah, when he was warned about the things not yet seen, in holy fear built an ark to save his family. By his faith, he condemned the world and became heir of the righteousness that comes by faith. Against all odds, he heard God and he followed and he obeyed and he built the ark. When we understand and embrace the core values of family, our life's priorities will actually look something like this. You see, when we look at the life of Noah, first of all, we have to understand that Noah feared God. He had a holy fear. It's not that he was trembling because God said something. No, it was a fear because he had this relationship with God. He feared God so much because God said it. The second thing is Noah obeyed God. Despite no rain, never heard of flood, there was nothing in that time, but he still obeyed God. And finally, Noah prioritized his family. He didn't leave his family behind. He built the ark and he took his family with him. Noah did not see a conflict between the things that God told him to do and his family. There was no conflict there. They served together. He didn't see his job, his ministry in any conflict. He saw family as a vital part of everything that they did together. When many years ago when we felt the call to come to India, my children were much smaller. And I think it was one of the most challenging. It was a scary decision, but it was also most challenging. Because you can never take your children for granted. You can never be sure how things are going to turn out. And it's only by the grace of God that, my family is the way it is. That my children love God and hopefully they love their parents too. They do. But that's how it is. I mean, that really they if they love God, they will love everybody else. But there's no guarantee. I know enough of leaders whose children completely hate God. Pastors whose children have no relationship with God at all. Now, I'm not advocating that Lynette and I have the best parenting skills or we've just done the most tremendous job with our families. No, I'm not advocating that. What I'm saying is that without God, it's not possible. But I believe this, when God calls us, He calls us as a family. And that's why we were able to do what we are doing. If there was dissension and strife in our family, we wouldn't have the joy of being able to do what God called us to do. But when God works and you're really in sync with Him, He'll work through your family. Now, when we understand and embrace the core value of family, our life's priorities would look something like this, that God would be number one. Sometimes I ask people to list out their priorities, and I cannot tell you what lopsided listings I've seen. If I ask people, can you tell me your top 5 priorities? For some it is work, 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 and more work. I've seen that. But if you want to have an understanding of priority and value of family, then please, I highly recommend this order. First is God. Second is spouse. Not your uncle, auntie, or not your parent, your spouse, if you're married. If you're married, then your spouse comes next. If not, it can be your parents. After your spouse comes your children. Your children don't go over your spouse. Okay, they don't become more priority. Now there's a season where they're small and you'll care for them more, but in order of priority, your spouse is over your children. Then comes our career or our job. You see, church has not yet come also. Job and career come number 4. And finally come church and ministry and all of that. So if we align ourselves to this order of priorities in our lives and in our families, then we'll all be doing pretty good. Now, most of the good news here is that most of you have not yet begun your families. So this is going to really help you if you put things in place now. Because if you started and you already gone wrong, then we have to do some redemptive work there. And any redemptive work is always more expensive and harder to do. It's always easier to start right and go right. So when you think of now, if God calls you to a job or whatever He calls you to do, please keep your life in sync and in proper priority. Because that's what you'll take into your marriage, that's what you'll take into your family. You see, both Lot and Noah were righteous. You need to understand this. They were both righteous men. They both knew God. But they both did family completely different. My prayer and my hope as we wrap up this and you understand the core value of family is that you would choose to do family like Noah and not like Lot. Don't always look at the financial gain. I'll give you a true story. When we were working corporate jobs, Lynette was offered a very high-paying job. And my children were small. And anybody else in her scenario would have taken the high-paying job. But she opted to take a job where she was paid much less. But she had lot of more time with with our children. The economics never matched. The money always looks lucrative. But I believe there's a season when you have to invest into your family. And if you miss that season, the money will never be able to replace that. You can have all the money you want. If you don't have relationship with your children, your money can't buy that relationship. Whether you have it a lot or less, cannot replace that. So we both worked jobs. We used to leave in the morning. When our children went to school, I would drop them to school. A friend of mine who's also now a pastor in Every Nation, he used to pick up, there were 5 children. We were 6 kids. He had 3, I had 3. 2 girls and a boy. We also have 2 girls and a boy. So morning I used to pick all the children up, 6 kids I used to drop to school. Afternoon he would pick up the 6 kids and bring them, drop his kids home and my kids home. I used to come home for lunch. I would have lunch, give my kids lunch, all of that. I would leave back at 2 o'clock to get back to work. By 2:30, Lynette used to be home. So my children were never without anybody. She was home 2:30. She worked 7 to 2:30, 7:30 to 2:30, something like that. Worked in the government of Dubai. So money was less, but priorities were right. There are seasons we've got to understand these things. And when we do that, you can build right. I want to show you this picture. When we talk of core values, this is what we talk about. Seems like a building. Right bottom is our purpose, why we exist. We exist to honor God and advance His kingdom. That's our purpose. Our core values are basically how we build. They are the pillars that hold up everything that we do. They are the 5 pillars: Lordship, evangelism, discipleship, leadership, and family. And as a church family, our priorities are church planting, campus ministry, and world missions. That's what we are committed to do on a bigger scale. So if we guard our pillars, then we can accomplish what God called us to do. But if we mess up on our pillars, then we cannot. So as I wrap up and close this series, I really want to encourage everybody. Just don't hear about our core values. If you feel God called you to be part of this family, then please embrace who we are. Walk with who we are. And I often tell people, God didn't. There's 2 ways you become part of a family. You're born or you're adopted. And the beauty with God is God adopted us in His family. That's how we become part of His family. There's a scripture in John says, you didn't choose me, I chose you. Apollo said in John 1:12, yet to all who received Him, to those who believed in His name, He gave the right to become children of God. God gives us the right. But that God also puts us into spiritual family. There are lots of churches. There are lots. But if God put you into this Every Nation family, I believe there's a plan and a purpose and a destiny that God has for why He put you here, for why He connected you. More than probably 18 years ago when I got connected with Every Nation, for the first few months, my children and we just completely hated it, hated our experience. The music was too loud, the people were different, and it was just too much of adjustment. But I said, let's stay. Sometimes you just need to stay a little while to understand. And once I began to really see the values of these families, see the mission, the heart, I got completely sold out. And I don't ever see myself leaving every nation. No, never. It's never going to happen. I don't think my children will ever walk away from this spiritual family. I hope for you, for those who you know this is your family, I hope that you never have an opportunity to walk away from family. That we will embrace all that God has for us.